Good evening, everybody. We're glad to have you on this evening on episode 3 of Preaching Through a Pandemic. And we're excited that you have joined us on this evening. Thank you as well for the kind words, the encouragement, the love that you've shown. So many of you have reached out to us and let us know that you've been blessed by these episodes, and we can't thank you enough. One of the things that we often say is that this is a new reality, and so when you tell us, that's the only way we really know, besides looking at the comments, whether we're being effective. And so we want to be effective. That's the reason why we're doing this. We want to be a blessing to you, help you, support you. And so that's why we're here tonight. Of course, as always, I'm joined by my friend and brother, Brother Anthony Walker, the minister of Highway 231, Church of Christ, in the beautiful city of Murfreesboro. So, Anthony.
All right. Good to see y'all. Glad to be here with my friend and brother, Brother Demetrius Nelson, the minister of the fastest growing, thriving, and just exciting congregation down in Columbia, Carmack Boulevard Church of Christ. So if y'all are in here, holler at us, show us some love in here. But we're thankful. And again, as he mentioned, this is the kind of stuff that we do even off camera. We just get together and talk, his family, my family. It's just love with us. And so as we decided to talk through some of these things, we wanted to welcome you and talk through with you. As always, if you guys have any questions on this subject that we're going to be dealing with today, anytime through the show, go ahead and put a comment in there. We've got some folk that are looking over the comments because we even want to deal with those questions as well. I will say this, as we're conducting the show today, we're going to have a special guest. I'll introduce her at that time, but I will tell you this much. She is a nurse. She's highly qualified, highly educated, very skillful in her field. And so she's going to be talking with us. We'll be asking her some questions. But if you have a question that you'd like to ask her, go ahead right now and drop those questions in the comment box below, and we'll be sure to get those questions asked and answered as well.
We're excited, but before she joins us, we want to just talk for a few minutes. Of course, things are opening up, in the Middle Tennessee area. The governor has shared that restaurants can be at 50% capacity. The barbershops are open, the nail salons are open, the beauty salons are open. And so we want to talk through that just for a moment as we kind of look at opening and things opening. Obviously, that kind of presents some questions, and that's what we're going to talk with our guest on today a little bit about. But we want to just talk for a few minutes about how we're working through. Of course, in these openings, one of the things that are opening well is our churches. So we're having those conversations around our churches opening, and what does that look like, and what protocols we want to put in place in order to serve our congregations. And so we're working through that, looking through that. Something funny. My barber, one of my best friends, he was strictly no house calls, no nothing. He followed the rules. And I'm telling you, as soon as he could start cutting again, I was the first one in line. I said I want to get in there before everybody else get in, and so he got to be cut, got us taken care of, and obviously Anthony, somebody done cut his beard, so he's been at the barbershop at home somewhere. So we were missing the barbershop, but in seriousness, those present challenges of how do we navigate, how do we move. Obviously, there's no vaccine. We still have to social distance. We still have to stay safe. But Anthony, what conversation you all having at Highway 231 and just with family, friends about moving back into these spaces?
Well, we were fortunate. Our leadership has really been active in thinking, trying to be forward thinking in this. And when we had, stopped having service at the building, we began immediately kind of thinking, okay, what are we going to do to kind of keep that connectedness going? And so, we had come up with an idea to have kind of a flashback service, but then our deacon of worship, he said, what about a drive-in service? Yeah. And so we've been doing the drive-in services, and you all have been coming, and it's just been a thrill. We've enjoyed it. So for now, that's where we're headed. However, we are thinking about what it's going to look like when we open up, how we're going to distance. We even had conversations today about, when we do get back in the building, how that's going to feel. One of my issues that I think about with that, and I shared that in our conversation today, is just you still want to have that feel.
Yes,
You still want it to feel, and we're known, for our worship atmosphere. We're known for being close and just that love and the energy that's there. So we're thinking about that, but then at the same time, we've given ourselves a wiggle room to, let's say things take a turn for the worst in the next couple of weeks, where, we're going to have to extend that time. Well, we still have the drive-in service option, and that's been working well. So, it's still a thought, but, I'll say this, the concern comes from, the members. We need that connected feel, but being safe at the same time.
That's right.
So it presents its challenges, man. And I know people are itching to get out.
Sure.
I try my best to stay in, but at the same time, you got to go get groceries, you got to go do things, but the safety is one of our main priorities.
Sure. Yeah. And the reality of it all, in looking at our calendars and looking at different things, I just got a call yesterday from a preaching engagement that they were canceling, and of course
that's happening.
Those are the new normals that they decided, just out of abundance of caution and making sure. And I'm all for it, because if they didn't call me, I was going to call them. So thinking about how we move into these spaces, and that's really why we wanted to have a medical professional, someone in the medical field, to kind of help us to navigate and really to ask those questions that we just don't know. That's not our area. That's not our expertise. And so to have someone on with us tonight to be able to ask those questions, how do we proceed, even outside of going into the building, the physical location, but how do we even move just daily? What's important? One of the things we've done as a family is that we order all our grocery online, and so and we've done that just since this has happened. And so it's been interesting. It's been different, and just like you, we try to stay in. I have a 16 to 18-year-old, so it's like I got to put a chain ball on their leg to keep them in. But they want to get out, they want to explore. But I think it is important for all of us to understand that we got to stay safe. That we have to make sure those that are the most vulnerable, obviously, keeping them safe. Because staying in and staying protected, staying distant, it's not just about you, it's about the people that we love.
Certainly.
And so I was actually listening to a Zoom leadership today, excuse me, a leadership meeting, and they were talking about how COVID-19 really is a ravager. That's the phrase that the medical doctor used, because he was just saying that what happens is that those who deal with issues like diabetes, those that deal with issues, number of ongoing chronic issues, heart disease, they have challenges not necessarily connected to COVID-19, but because they are struggling and maybe not getting the attention because so much attention is put on COVID-19. And so you have to be extra careful. Those that are in renal failure, those that are dealing with a number of chronic illnesses, they have to be more careful, because the emphasis and attention is put on, obviously, the coronavirus. And so those that have the ongoing, if they're not taking care of themselves, it's difficult, because all the resources are put towards the coronavirus. And so it's just a lot of things to think about, a lot of things to consider. And so our advice, of course, is stay safe. But I think we're going to bring on our guest in just a moment here. And we have some very pointed, specific questions for her. And so I'll turn it over to Anthony.
Sure. I see this one question, and I'm going to go ahead and get this now while we've got it, because it's pertinent to what we just said. And I don't know, it may be a thought for you and I. We'll go ahead and allow my mom to ask. She asks, are you guys considering splitting services for the high-risk age group from others? How about you guys?
Yeah, so thank you. Thank you, Sister Amaryllis. We appreciate your question, and thank you for being a faithful viewer. You on early all the time. You and my mama, y'all are number one support team. I talked to her this evening. She said I'll be on that. But to your question, we have kind of walked through that. One of the things that's unique to our space at Carmack is that we have upstairs and downstairs. And so one of the things that we considered is making the downstairs just for those who may be older or may have compromised situation, but they want to be at the building. And so obviously one of the first things we're saying is that, hey, if you have underlying health conditions, please just stay at home and continue to watch us virtually. That's what we're doing. We're doing all online. But if you want to be there, we want to make that downstairs space available for those who want to be spread out, for those who want to have their own space. And so, yes, we are thinking about that. Another thing we're considering is having multiple worships and then having a space in between in order to wipe down, to clean, to make sure that everything is ready for the next group, as well as, and this idea that a fellow minister shared with me, is alternating the pews that people sit on. So the first group would sit on every other pew, and then the next group coming in would sit on the pew that was empty. And so that was just kind of a neat way I said that was interesting. And then dismissal would be dismissing one row at a time as opposed to everybody leaving.
Oh, wow.
And so that we've really been thinking through and considering and trying to touch every basis that we could. We have 3 exits at Carmack, and so we were, of course, thinking about that people can exit any of those 3 exits, but again, one row at a time. So there's not this mass gathering. So yeah, there's a lot of things that we're thinking through and trying to think about to make sure, because even though you may be older and you may have a compromised immune system, that some folks just want to be there. And we get that. We understand.
Yes.
I got some folks that I got to make wear a mask, and I got to make like stay at home, but they want to be at the gathering. They want to be with us, and so we understand that. So we want to put those precautions in place.
Yeah. For us, as we think about that, we've already had to think about multiple services just because of our dynamic. I'm going to say mama because it is my mama, but you've been there. You know how we were before, so we can't have that kind of number. But if not splitting services, we've got kind of fortunate. We've got some fellowship hall space where we could split off some of our audience that way. So we're considering that. But as you mentioned, let me just say this. When you started at Carmack like 5 years ago,
Sure.
It's safe for me to say the last thing, or if it was at all on your mind, was managing a church through a pandemic.
Right, exactly.
That wasn't even on. I mean, it wasn't on my mind at 231 to think. I mean, it wasn't even. So you got to understand, we're talking about things that we had no clue that we would be thinking about. So any minister that's saying, "Oh, I was prepared for this," even your dad's generation, sure. They didn't have to deal with a pandemic like this. We don't even have a resource that we can go to say what happened when you guys dealt with this. So it's something. Thank you for that question. And I see a couple of others that we'll be dealing with. Let me go ahead and introduce to you all one of our members. Her name is Jade Bartholomew, and let me get her sound cut on here. But she is I'm saying nurse, but she's got a full alphabet behind her name. Let me see if I can get you pulled up here, Jade. All right. Can you hear us, Jade?
I can.
Good. And we can hear you as well. So Jade, she is a nurse residency supervisor, but help us with the alphabet behind. I wasn't even going to try to Google that. I was just going to let you answer. What is that stuff? What do those letters and things mean?
So the BSN, that is my degree, my bachelor's of science in nursing. RN is my registered nurse, and the CMSRN.
CSRM MSNBC. Gotcha.
Hey. But those letters, So the specialty area of nursing that I was in is called medical surgical nursing.
Okay.
And recently I had to take a test, take a test, and I got certified in med surg nursing. So CMSRN is certified medical surgical registered nurse.
Wow.
Amen.
Wow. Thank you for that.
That's
That's right. An expert in the area. So I'm going to let Demetrius, he's been chomping at the bit. He's got a lot of questions to ask. I'm going to let him shoot off the first couple for you.
So Jay, the first question I have really kind of is personal. One of the things, we took a trip, my family and I took a trip to Hawaii. My son has terrible allergies, and it was right about the time before things started shutting down in the U.S. And so I took my son to the doctor because my wife told me that when we get on the plane going to Hawaii, we're wearing masks the entire time. And I'm like, really? Are you serious? We're going to wear masks? And force us to wear masks the entire time. So when we went to the doctor before we left, I said, hey, doc, I got to ask you a question. Do I have to wear a mask when I get on the plane? He said, no, don't wear it. This actually is a mild respiratory disease. Really, the people who need to be wearing the mask are the people that are infected or people that are sick, but you should not. So that was pre-shutdown. That's before NBA shut down and MLB shut down and everybody shut down. So that was the advice that he gave us. Of course, we're on the plane about to come back, and my son tells me, Daddy, the NBA shut down. Daddy, this, he told me, and so it's like it had went from when we left, probably 5 or 6 days before, to now this is a pandemic and state of emergency. So I guess my question is that from a mild respiratory disease, what my doctor was telling us, to now, obviously, we're looking at it in a very more serious way. Almost 80,000 people, about, some say, some statistics say over 80,000. So can you explain to us, that the seriousness of it, I guess, and maybe a little bit about the disease?
Yeah. So when COVID initially came out in the U.S., that is very true. What we thought it just this mild respiratory disease. Even I thought that. We were like, oh, it's just like the flu. Do what you need to do with the flu.
Yeah.
But as it started spreading quicker and communities and different groups started getting it, we're like, okay, we need to start doing something about this. The main reason why COVID is so serious is because there is no cure, there's no vaccine. As far as treatment goes, it's just symptom management. If you have a cough, you take cough medicine. If you have a fever, you're taking Tylenol.
Yeah.
So a lot of COVID is just treating the symptoms. And again, like I said, with the flu, we have prophylactic treatment. We have a vaccine. We have antivirals that we take, Tamiflu.
Right.
And as far as the seriousness of COVID, I think when I was looking on CDC and WHO, so anytime I give out a number, that's where I'm getting my numbers from.
Okay.
About 80% of COVID cases are mild and can be treated at home. After that, 15% are serious, and then 5% are critical. So that 20%, they're being hospitalized for oxygen and other therapies that can't be taken care of at home. So thinking about that and no cure, so that makes it a little bit more serious than the flu. Another thing too is with flu, you see symptoms pretty sudden. There's a sudden onset of symptoms. With COVID, it's pretty gradual. From the time you're infected to the time that you see symptoms, as far as the flu goes, is 1 to 4 days. So you can see symptoms between 1 to 4 days. With COVID, there's a longer period of time that you might not see symptoms. So you could have been infected but not see symptoms until 2 weeks later. Which is why when they tell you, if you have been in contact with anybody that has COVID or anybody that's being tested, you yourself should be quarantined also for 14 days, because that is pretty much that's what's called the incubation time.
Right.
Yeah.
before you can start seeing the onset of those symptoms.
Okay. I've got a couple of questions that have come in, and they're kind of similar, kind of around the protective thing. What are some, protective measures that we need to take? One of our guests asked, for example, when specifically do we need to wear masks? Another asked, even when we get ready to open up, should we be wearing protective gear? So what are your kind of tips on that?
As far as protective things, number one, always wash your hands. That's a given. That is not a new thing. That did not come around just COVID came around. That has always been a thing. So wash your hands. Wash your hands. As far as masks, I know people are, kind of leery about, when they should wear a mask. Anytime, I would err on the side of caution. Anytime you're going out to the grocery store or places where there are numerous people within close distances, definitely wear a mask. And even the CDC has now gone from no, only people that are infected need to wear a mask to yes, everyone should be wearing a mask if they are out. I know even some stores have mandated that you have to wear a mask when you are shopping. What was the second question that they asked?
So the second one was, when we get ready to open up as churches, should we come then wearing our protective gear?
If it's a large gathering, I err on the side of caution and I say yes. Okay. The transmission of this disease is through droplet. So droplets from sneezing, coughing, and talking to each other. So that mask prevents those droplets from getting out on everybody else. Gotcha. So that's another reason why we have social distancing. That's 6 feet. That's a safe distance for everybody. And with social distancing, you also should wear a mask. So it's not one or the other. You should do both. The mask is not in replacement of social distancing or vice versa.
So still 6 feet with my mask?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
So my question, and you hit on that, my next question was about the transmission, and you said that it is transmitted through droplets. And so sneezing, talking, just any droplets. And so the follow-up to that, my question is, how long does it stay on surfaces? Is there any concrete information to say that if it is that I'm infected and I cough, I sneeze, and those droplets land on the table or whatever, how long will it still, if somebody else comes behind me, that they'll be infected or could be?
So there have been a couple studies on that. As far as how long they stay on a surface, it depends on what the surface is. Okay. I think the highest I've seen is like on plastic and like tables with like steel tables or things like that. It could be days. Other materials could be hours. But the big thing to take away from that is in order for a virus to replicate, it has to be inside a living host. So meaning like me or you, it has to be inside of us to replicate. So when it lands on a surface, it's not, the longer it's on that surface, the less viable it is, or viable meaning the less likely it is to infect you or to work. So as far as being leery of like surfaces you touch and everything like that, you're more likely to get it from just talking back and forth to somebody within like, a couple feet distance versus just touching and putting it on you. Okay. I think a study I've seen has said that the longer, as far as like it living on surfaces, the disease is only like 0.1% viable on that surface. Okay. That doesn't mean though you should go touching everything and then like lick your hand or something crazy like that. Go rubbing your eye, all those things. Definitely wash your hands. And as far as like protecting yourself, clean your surfaces daily. Anything that gets high traffic, meaning anything that you're touching all the time, your doorknobs, your steering wheel, tables you sit at. I mean, anything you're touching all the time, you need to wipe down every day. Your household cleaners and things like that. I've
got a couple of others that just came in. air to our audience. I would rather their questions be answered. They're very good ones. One, Sister Erica, she asked, can we use hand sanitizer too much?
No,
Okay.
no,
Okay.
no.
All right.
That's an easy one.
Yeah, not at all. I would also, if soap and water is available, they always say use that because you're sitting there. Because I will say, so for hand sanitizer to work effectively, it should sit on your hand. It should sit on your hands wet for like 20 seconds after. So you shouldn't like have like a little squirt rub and then it be dry. It's supposed to sit wet for about 20 seconds afterwards.
Oh, okay.
So
So we need
soap and
to,
water is definitely better.
gotcha.
'Cause you
Soap
sit
and
there
water.
scrubbing.
Soap and
Yeah.
water. Wash your hands.
Yes.
All right. Had another one. My mom was asking, my stepfather, he works at a hospital and deals with COVID patients. And he actually changes out of his clothes and his scrubs in the garage before he goes
Yep.
into the house. Should he do anything more in that process?
That is honestly a really good practice for him to do. I know that they've implemented that here at St. Thomas Rutherford. They have advised our nurses come in a different pair of clothes, change into your scrubs as you work. You work in your scrubs. When you're about to come home, change your clothes and then immediately head to the shower as soon as you get home.
Gotcha.
Um, so
Gotcha.
I guess that would be the only thing I add is take a shower as soon as you get in.
Okay. Let me ask you this: what has your experience been throughout all of this? Share some things that have maybe changed for you. Some the workload, or what has this experience done for you?
Definitely workload has definitely changed. We've had to get very creative on how we give our information out to our new nurse residents and even just our regular nurses. Typically with our new nurse residents, they get a week-long in-person, 8-hour a day, 5 days a week orientation.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had to whittle that down to one day. And typically we have them all together. Well, now because of guidelines, we can only have 10 people in a group. So we've had to split it up and pull in multiple people from our education department to kind of help orient them. So whittling that down, and now everything they do is virtual. So we do hire into, like, we call them specialty tracks. So that's our ICU and ED. So you have brand new baby nurses in the ICU and the ER. And they typically do get more in-person training, but because of COVID, everything has become online. So
Right.
they have to adapt to learning everything online without an in-person hands-on class, which has definitely been a struggle for them. So getting them to kind of, buy into like this is going to help, and we're always in the works of, trying to provide in-person classes later, especially now that it's slowing up a little bit. We're always constantly thinking and creating new things. As far as my job, I round on my residents. They work 3 12-hour shifts. I round on them at least twice a week. My conversations with them have been a little different versus, what kind of patients do you have? I've had to really kind of dive into, well, how do you guys feel about COVID? A lot of my residents have kids. How do you feel about going home to your kids? Are you nervous? Are you afraid? Also with my job too, I interact a lot with management and upper leadership type people, and asking them, well, how are you doing? Because, no one really asks leadership how they're doing. Yeah. So their feelings, certain decisions have to be made. Not everybody likes the decisions that are made. They're doing a lot of things that they don't normally do within their job description. So they're serving a lot more. They're out there a lot more. And sometimes it can be a little thankless. So checking on them and making sure that they're okay. It's been a good, at least for me, it's been a good kind of evangelism type time.
Okay.
Kind of sliding that in because, luckily I work at a hospital where our mission lines up with Jesus's ministry.
Yeah.
paying special attention to the poor and vulnerable and serving like he served. And we know not everybody was, on board with what Jesus was doing and the ways he did things and why, and they were questioning why did he, do certain things the way he did. And just reminding those nurses, like, you were called to do this. And I know not everybody sees everything you're doing, but encouraging them, like, I see you. And more importantly, God sees you. He sees what you're doing. He sees that you're loving. He sees what you're doing for his people to make sure that they're safe and that they feel, the love from you and feel connected and everything like that. So
that's awesome.
That's good.
yeah.
There's another one. We got another couple of questions from our audience. Sister Marcy, she asked, and she says that, we see microphones being passed from person to person, sometimes at worship. Is that something that, now what we've been doing at 231, Brother Nelson, he's been, every time somebody takes a mic, he has a hand sanitizer thing and he's wiping it down. Any other tips that we need to be concerned about as we're conducting worship?
I think that's the main thing, is just make sure you're cleaning everything from person to person. I know it's not natural to just between everybody, like, oh, let me sit and clean. So you have to be very diligent and very intentional about, I need to clean this before I hand it off to somebody else and that sort of thing. I think what you guys have been doing has been great. I've loved it. And I mean, the drive-ins have been the best, but as far, I think what everyone has been doing has been good.
Brother Nelson, you got one?
So we got another question that was shared. Jay, asking about specific symptoms that you have seen to help people know that, hey, I need to be tested. I need to be, on alert. So what are some symptoms you can share with us?
So the common ones are cough, shortness of breath, and muscle pain. Very similar to the flu. So if you're having at least those main symptoms, definitely call your doctor first. Do not go to the ER unless you're experiencing shortness of breath and something to that extreme. If it's just muscle pain and cough, you can always call your doctor and they'll let you know if you have to get tested. You should not go to the ER just to get tested.
Okay.
Because there are certain criteria you have to meet to get tested. Some other non-common things that we're seeing now is kind of some gastrointestinal type issues like nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, headaches, loss of appetite, loss of taste, sense of smell, those sort of things. Like I said, always err on the side of caution. I know a lot of people, some people think, oh, it's just allergies. Oh, it might just be food poisoning. Just call your doctor and they'll let you know, and they can guide you on kind of what your steps are for that.
Okay. One other question I had, Jay, and if it is that you have contracted COVID and you've made it through your 14 days, my dad actually contracted the coronavirus, and he went through. He's on the other side now, and of course, his doctor reached out to him and said that we'd like to take your blood for antibodies. But my question specifically is that if you have contracted coronavirus, are you immune, or can you get it again, or you talk about that?
So there's not. The coronavirus has not been around long enough to know whether you're immune or whether you can get it again. We'll kind of see as the year kind of comes back around again what happens. But as of right now, no, we don't know if you're immune or if you can get it again. What they are trying to do, I know that you mentioned with your dad with them taking his blood. They are using people that have had the coronavirus. They are taking their blood and making it into what's called a convalescent plasma. And that is being used in very serious coronavirus cases in which it puts antibodies into that patient to kind of help fight or neutralize the coronavirus. And so far it's been seeming to help. But again, as far as if you get it again or not, I'm not they're not completely sure.
I got you. I got you. Okay.
Okay. I'm just thinking about all of these things that you gave as symptoms. I got a question about those that have allergies. What is what would a person who has allergies, what do they I mean? Is it just that I cut the grass, or do I have COVID-19? What's going on? What do I need to do?
I mean, let me say this. People know their bodies, they know their
Okay.
symptoms and stuff. But again, err on the side of caution
Gotcha.
because we know how this spreads too.
Hmm.
So you coughing and sneezing and everything all over the house because of your allergies and stuff. It could very well be allergies.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I call your doctor and always just say, hey, this is what I got going on.
Err on the
It
side
doesn't
of
hurt
caution.
at all.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so as it relates to, and you've kind of hit some of them, as far as like best practices. So we realize
Yeah.
there's no vaccine. We realize that this is kind of where we're at. So what would you suggest as kind of top three or top five best practices? Just moving about, just you're doing your regular everyday life. What would be best practices that you would suggest for us?
Number one is wash your hands.
Okay.
Wash your hands. That's number one. Number two, if you don't have to go, at least right now, if you don't have to go out, don't. Just because we're opening stuff does not mean coronavirus just left the building.
Sure.
There are still people being tested every day. There are still confirmed cases. So coronavirus did not leave. So that does not mean you should just go back to what you were doing. If you do have to go out, if you do have to do anything like that, where in public, in large group settings, make sure you wear a mask. Like I said, the transmission of the disease is through droplet, through coughing, sneezing, talking. Make sure you wear your mask. And I think another thing too, and this is just kind of my soapbox real quick. I know people like to wear gloves when they're out sometimes.
Tell us about the glove deal.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
um, the,
Go ahead. Speak freely. You're the expert.
We're having candid. Listen, hold on, Jay. While you get yourself together, let me tell you what we're doing. We're having candid conversations. So we want you to be candid, and we want people to understand. We really do. So speak. Obviously you're professional and you're the expert. You're the only expert on this channel right now.
Right.
So we do want you to speak from that professional place, but as well be candid with us, because we've got several people. I don't know how many people are streaming right now, but we got several people who are streaming this live, and they're listening and they want to know, about the gloves. And I'll share this while you get your mind right, because I know, like you said, this is your soapbox. But let me give you, I've noticed people at the places that I've gone, at the grocery store, now one of the things that I saw, I don't know how effective this is, because I saw a guy who was in line in front of me. He had on a mask and he had on gloves. And when he was going through the process of paying, he had questions to ask, and the attendant couldn't hear him. So he pulls down his mask and bites the tip of his glove to take his gloves off to ask her the question. So I'm like, I don't know, you've really, so please help us to understand the deal with gloves. And you've always stressed to me, even prior to COVID, even flu season, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. So I appreciate that. But give us the professional yet candid response to the deal with gloves.
So the majority of people do not know how to use gloves properly. When we are at the hospital, so if we had to make a comparison, so when people go to the grocery store and they're wearing gloves, the first thing they do is, if they have their gloves on in their car, they get out their car. So they're walking in, then they touch the handle on the grocery cart. So that's another thing they touch. You keep walking, you grabbed and touched this, you grabbed and touched that. You get to checkout. You reach in your pocket, grab your wallet, pull it out, pull out your card, touch buttons that everybody else has already touched. So you've cross-contaminated everything. So at the hospital, that would be like me using the same gloves from patient to patient in each room. Me just sharing everybody's germs from room to room to room.
Gotcha.
Like I said before, as far as how long the virus lives on surfaces, it can be hours to days, but that viability, that how long, what it takes to live and work and everything like that goes down the longer it's on there. So your best bet is to just wash your hands after you're done grocery shopping, to use your hand sanitizer before you get back in your car. Because
washing hands.
Yeah, washing hands, man.
So that's a practice that I've been doing since all of this. That if I have to go out, I will go do my normal thing. But as soon as I get in the car, I use my hand sanitizer, and as soon as I get home, I wash my hands and things like that. So that would, using hand sanitizer before you go in, after you get out, and then washing your hands when you get home. I've got one more, Demetrius. I don't know if you've got one more, but I've got one more from our guest that someone asked. It has been said, and I've heard this. Is it true that this can come through your eyes? I've seen that somewhere. I don't know if you guys have heard that in your field, but do we know much about transmission through the eyes?
Not that I know of, but if it is, it's not as strong as the ways that I've been talking about, just through talking season, just through respiratory secretions. That's what the virus is, a respiratory virus. So through the eyes, I'm not sure, but anything respiratory wise coming out your nose, mouth, that is pretty much the biggest way you can get it.
Okay. All right.
So stop wearing gloves, wash your hands, sanitizer, use it often, and just stay safe. You've been a blessing tonight, Jay. You really have helped us, and I think helped our listening audience if they kind of peeked in while just the three of us talk. And so we appreciate you. You gave us a lot of good information. Is anything that you want to share with us before you leave us tonight?
No, just wash your hands. That's it. But no, I appreciate you guys having this, because this is awesome. You guys are pretty freaking awesome. I mean, I know your congregations appreciate you guys a lot, and your leadership and your creativity. Man, I was telling Anthony yesterday, I was like, man, this is legit. Y'all are so fancy. Like, I love this. This is awesome.
All right, Jay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate that.
We appreciate you coming on and sharing with us, and who knows, we may have you on again.
I'll be ready.
All right, Brother Demetrius.
So that was incredible, guys. I hope that you were blessed by it. I hope that you enjoyed it as well. We thank Jade for her expertise and sharing. But as always, as we land this plane, we landed with the word. And so I want you to look at with me Jeremiah 8 and verse 22. As we're thinking about medicine and thinking about the medical field, one of the things that Jeremiah shares with us in chapter 8, verse 22, he says, is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no physician there? Why then is there no recovery from the health of the daughter of my people? While it is that we have medical professionals that we lean on, one of the things that our profession tells us is that we are the spiritual physicians. That is what God has called us to. God has called us to ministering to the spirit, to the soul, to the man that is not touched by flesh, but the man who is touched by the spirit. And so we take that responsibility very seriously. We lean in that space to where, we want to stay safe, but I'm more concerned about your soul. Jesus said to himself that, you know what, that don't fear what can just take your flesh, your body, but fear what can take both your body and your soul. And so we have to be mindful that I want to have my life aligned with God. In Jeremiah's sharing what I said on last night, or rather not last night, but on Tuesday during our Bible study, I said we're in a season right now where we don't need copycats. We need people who are authentic and real. And as it relates to our mandate from God in order to share the word with others, the reason why we have to be authentically aligned with God's word is because there's people hurting. That there's people that need a word from God. There's people who need to know that there is hope even in this situation. I'm confirmed by what it is that we're being authentic when it is that two people called me after Bible study and said, Brother Nelson, you must have been in my journal. You must have been reading my text. You must have knew exactly what I need to hear. That's when I know that God has aligned and we are walking in what it is that God would have us to walk into and being authentic to the call on our lives. And I just believe that, listen, that if we say we're the church, that we say we're the bride of Christ, we're his representative in the earth, somebody should get better.
Lord have mercy.
So somebody should get better after they listen to preaching through a pandemic. Somebody should get better after we enjoy worship virtually or in a car at a drive-in. Somebody should get better.
Yes, sir.
And I just believe that Jeremiah calls us and pushes us to say, you know what? There is help. There is balm in Gilead. And we want to give that balm, that healing, that help, that support for those who need it. And so I pray and hope that these mediums and avenues that we're using with one thing in mind, in order to help somebody, in order to lift up Jesus, in order for somebody to know that even through a pandemic, that Christ is still on the throne. And so we hope that blesses you. We hope that I'm going to turn it over to my brother now, and he's going to share a little bit with us as well.
My, that was a word right there. I don't know if I even want to say anything after that. An amen belongs right there. Listen, there's a text that came to mind tonight as I was thinking about our guest. I was thinking about the fact that we had a nurse on and her expertise and what they do. And there's a text in the book of Luke chapter 5. We find that Jesus had gone to a tax collector's house. Yeah. And it was such a problem for him to go to a tax collector's house because of the lifestyle that they lived and the things that they did. But it wasn't just that Jesus would go to a tax collector's home. We found that Jesus went to lepers' homes, that Jesus would even touch them. And so when the Pharisees saw him going to yet another party, but at a party at a tax collector's home, they said, "Why do you eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners?" And Jesus answered and said to them, "Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick." And what Jesus is saying here is that there is a population of folk who are sick and they need a physician. They don't need those who are judgmental, those who are critical. They need someone that can look beyond their condition. When I think about nurses, when I think about doctors, they're helping people that cannot help themselves. People come in with all kinds of ailments and sneezes and coughs and all kinds of stomach issues. They can't help themselves, but there's a population of people that when we would run out, they run in. Amen. They run in and they're trying to help. And those who are effective at it, they're not in a paycheck. They're in it to look beyond your issue and see you at your very need. And that's what Jesus did for us. But I stand here to tell you, as Jesus goes on to say, "I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance." What Jesus is saying here is that we've all been infected. Yeah. We've all been infected by a disease that doesn't have an earthly cure. Mercy. It's got to all of us and we can't help ourselves with it. It has various symptoms. It affects everybody differently. It goes through some of the things that people go through. Disease, it is infection, all sin. Mercy. And the only thing that takes care of sin, the only cure, is man-made. Yes, sir. It's the blood of Jesus. Amen. So we thank God for Jesus and thank for what he has done. Listen, I just enjoyed being tonight and hope that tonight has been a blessing for you. Again, we just have these candid conversations preaching through a pandemic. We y'all again has blessed your life. be sure to share that with someone. Share it, encourage them, share it, even with all the useful information that was given to us tonight.
That's right.
Brother Nelson, if you will, close out in a word.
Let's get that word opportunity. So God, that information share. Use that. God, we're most thankful for the word and the word and what the word does and how it moves in our life. Thank you for your son who gave us the cure to our disease. That we had no cure for. God, we thank you for it, and we thank you for him. And it is in his name, his mighty name, that we move and we have our very being. It is in his mighty name that we stand against me. It is in his mighty name that we continue to move to bring souls to you. And God, we ask your blessing over everyone that joined us on tonight. Will you add a blessing on their life? Would you help them? Would you love them? Would you let them know the right way? Jesus.
Amen. Amen. You all have a good rest of the evening, and we'll see you the next time preaching through a pandemic.